Welcome back, everyone. We are on lesson 3 of linear relations part 2, and today I'm going to go through standard form part 2. We're going to start off by just going over what it means to find x and y intercepts in a little warm-up, and then after that I'm going to show you how to graph an equation using x and y intercepts. All right, so for the first question, for each line, identify the coordinates of the x and y intercepts. So just looking at the two lines that we have here, what is the x-intercept of line A and what is the y-intercept of line A? So x-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis, and for this question it would be at -3, 0. And then on the y-axis, we're looking to see where our line crosses the y-axis, and it crosses at the point 0, 2. And for line B, the x-intercept would be about a half, it looks like, so a half comma 0. And then the y-intercept would be down here at -1, so 0 comma -1. Now what if we're given a table instead? All right, what would the x-intercept be in a table? So just looking back at the graph, notice that the x-intercepts always list the value first, and then the second part of the coordinate is always a 0. And for the y-intercepts, the first part is a 0, and the second part would be the actual value. All right, so we're looking in our table for a number that has a 0 as the second part. And you can see that it's going to be 1 comma 0. This is going to be our x-intercept. All right, so x-intercept occurs when the y part of the point is equal to 0. Looking over here, that one would be 6, 0. And then the y-intercept occurs when x is equal to 0. So it would be 0, 12. And then for the second table, the y-intercept occurs when x is 0, and you can see that would be this point right here. Okay, so 0, 9. All right, so essentially that leads us into finding the x and y intercepts, all right, of an equation, and then using that information to graph. So to find the x-intercept, the y part of the coordinate will always be equal to 0. So we're saying x-intercept let y equal 0. So we're going to force the y in the equation to be equal to 0. Okay, so I'm going to replace the y with a 0 in my equation in the next line. Okay, notice I replaced the y with a 0. Okay, now I only have one variable in this equation, so now I can solve for that x to see what that x value is. 5 times 0 is 0, so this will be eliminated and we'll be left with 4x minus 20. Bring the 20 to the other side, change its sign, so 4x equals 20. And now divide both sides by 4. To solve for x. So x is equal to 5. Okay, therefore our x-intercept is going to be 5. We should write that point down. So 5 comma 0. Okay, and we're going to put that onto our graph. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so there's our x-intercept, okay, of that line. Now we need to find the y-intercept. So to find the y-intercept, we're going to do the same thing, but now we're going to replace the x with 0. So in your equation, wherever there's an x, you're going to replace that with a 0. Okay, so we have 4 times 0 is 0, so that will be gone, and we'll be left with -5y minus 20 equals 0. Bring the 20 to the other side. Becomes positive, and now divide both sides by -5. When you do that, you get y equals -4, and I'm going to write that point down as well. Okay, so now our y-intercept point is 0 comma -4, and we can put that on our graph. 1, 2, 3, 4, so that goes right here, and then just use a ruler and add a nice straight line. There we go. So we've graphed this equation, all right, using x and y intercepts. Now, I know you could have also taken this equation and rearranged it into y equals mx plus b form, and then plotted your y-intercept, and then used your y-intercept to and the slope to get a second point, and then join those. And you would have ended up with the same line. This is just another way of graphing equations that might not necessarily be in y equals mx plus b form. All right, question B, graph each of the following using x and y intercepts. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing again. Just another example, x-intercept, let y equal 0. You're always writing these statements first to show what you're doing. Replace your y with 0. Okay, so now we have 2x equals negative 12. And just divide both sides by 2 to give you x equals negative 6. Okay, so our x-intercept is negative 6, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's going to go over here. And then for the y-intercept, now replace your x with 0. 3y minus 12. And what I've done here is, since this was already positive, I just left it where it was, and I just moved the negative 12 over to the other side to make it positive. So we have 12 equals 3y. Divide both sides by 3, because we're trying to isolate for the y, right? We want that y to be by itself. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Okay, so y-intercept for this question would be at 4, which is up here. And then take your line and go right through. There we go. Question 2, determine the equation of a line whose x-intercept is negative 5 and y-intercept is 7. All right, so this one doesn't have a graph, but I'm going to ask you to write an equation. And we're going to write that equation in y equals mx plus b form. All right, so what information is given to us? We have x-intercept is negative 5. From that, you can create an actual point. Right? The actual point would be negative 5 comma 0. So that gives us an x and a y for the equation. And the second piece of information is y-intercept is 7. And we know that that would be the b. Okay, so now in this equation there are 4 letters, x, y, m, and b. All right, b we have is a 7, x and y is an actual point, which we have. The only thing we don't have is m. So now we can solve for m by replacing the 4 letters or the 3 letters that are given to us. Okay, so all I'm going to do here is move the negative 5m to the other side because that will make it positive. So we have 5m equals 7, divide both sides by 5. And you're going to end up with your slope, which is 7 over 5. And it's asking you to write the equation. So we're going to write it in the y equals mx plus b form. And when you're writing an equation in that form, you need to replace the m with your slope and the y-intercept, your b with your y-intercept. And we have both of that information. Okay, y-intercept was 7, that was given to us, and the slope we just found to be 7 over 5. One more question. Okay, for this one here, it's asking you to solve a system of equations using x and y intercepts. Solving a system of equations means find the spot where these two lines intersect, where they cross. Okay, you will run into scenarios where lines don't cross. That happens if they have the same slope. In this example, they don't have the same slope. You will see when we graph them that they don't. All right. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did for the previous few questions. I'm going to find the x and y intercept for each of these lines, and then I'm going to graph them and see where they cross. All right, so x-intercept for the first equation, you're going to let the second letter equal 0, right? If you're looking for x-intercept, y equals 0. If you're looking for y-intercept, then x equals 0. So y is 0, replace your y with 0. Okay, the 2 times 0, that's going to disappear, and you'll be left with negative 3x equals 6. And then divide both sides by negative 3. That gives you x equals negative 2. So I'm going to just put that on my graph, x at negative 2. And then for the y-intercept, do the same thing now. Replace your x with 0. and you'll be left with 2y equals 6. Divide both sides by 2, and you end up with y equals 3. Okay, and then just grab a ruler and add a nice straight line. Okay, the key here is to be really neat and to extend your line on either ends. All right, you could look at the pattern. How do you get from the left dot to the right dot? You're going to go up 3 and over 2. So that pattern should continue. Up 3 over 2. So your line needs to go through that point. I'm just going to adjust it a little bit, right? Or you're going to go down 3 over to the left 2. Down 3 over 2. So make sure that your line is very precise. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time finding that intersection. For the second equation, same thing, let x equal, for x-intercept, let y equal 0. So replace your y with 0 in the equation. All right, and you'll be left with x minus 2 equals 0. Bring the negative 2 to the other side, and you've got your x-intercept. X-intercept at 2. There we go. Y-intercept, let x equal 0. Okay, so we have negative 2y minus 2. I brought the 2 to the other side. The negative 2 became positive, and now divide both sides by negative 2. Y equals negative 1. There we go, and add your line very carefully, and you can see that the lines are going to intersect at this point here. And what is that point? 1, 2, 3, negative 4, and down 3. There we go. So there's your solution. For homework, we are on lesson 3 in the 5th unit for linear relationships part 2. You don't need to do all the questions. If you'd like to do them all, go ahead. You can do that. But I'm requiring you to do for question 1 ACG H, or ACG and H, question 2 A and C, question 3 A and C, and then questions 4 to 7. All right, that's all I'm going to ask you to do. Also, make sure that you've gone on and that you've created your video, which was for Monday's homework, and upload that to Flipgrid. All right, good luck, and let me know if you need some help. Take care.